This is a late to the party stream for my newsletter, Astrolabe, which is a semi-regular newsletter I put out. It covers science fiction and fantasy, retro video games, all sorts of stuff. Today, I'm playing Final Fantasy III for Late to the Party, which is a column where I cover retro video games chosen by my followers on Twitter. You can find me there at a dribble of ink, which is the same as my Twitch handle. And I let my Twitter followers pick what game I'm going to play for the column. Usually, I'll go for something that I haven't played before, so a new experience, and I can talk about what that's like. Today, though, I went with a familiar face, but with a twist. And what I'm playing is called Final Fantasy III Brave New World. It's a major conversion mod for Final Fantasy VI that focuses on cleaning up the play experience, cleaning up the progression systems, trying to create a game where one of Final Fantasy VI's biggest problems is all the characters sort of end up the same at the end, right? They have their special abilities, but that's it. And some of those special abilities are better than others, but at the end of the day, you give them all the same Espers, they got all the same spells, they all become powerhouses. Brave New World, which I'm going to be showing you today, really focuses on trying to make each of the characters more individualized so that they have more defined strengths and weaknesses in battle, giving them more identity. And they've done that through a major overhaul to the Esper system. As anyone remembers from Final Fantasy III, Espers are these magical beings that you can acquire, and after they've died, they become crystals that you can attach and gain powers. Brave New World has a whole new system where Espers provide more diverse skills than the original game, and my understanding, I believe, is that Espers are also locked to certain characters, so you're going to you're not going to be able to load Sabin up and make him a super sweet a super sweet white mage, for instance, like you can in the original Super Nintendo version. Yeah, that's right. So Brave New World is like a collection of a bunch of hacks that have been slapped on top of like a major overhaul of the enemies, the battle AI, the bosses, the progression system. And so it adds in a ton of changes to the actual experience. So like playing the game from top to bottom is quite a bit different than the original experience. And then it also just adds in a ton of little quality of life changes that I'll talk to a little bit. So here we are. This is the original just the original intro movie. I'm playing a version of Brave New World that's using he put almost zero thought into the Esper allocations. Interesting. Okay. I don't think I certainly won't get far enough today to get the Espers, but I'm curious to play further into the game to see eventually how that all breaks down and whether oh, okay. We got a little drama. But in any case, I played okay. I got fooled there. So that's really cool. I'm excited. I've played the original Final Fantasy VI a lot. I played it again most recently, probably 2 years ago. Put a ton of time into it, and so I'm excited to give this like a fair shot and see how the experience has changed over time to become just more modernized, I guess. Like Final Fantasy VI was still being created when Japanese RPGs were in their infancy, and it helped establish a lot of trends that we saw grow throughout the remaining throughout the remaining 20 years since then that have kind of defined Japanese RPGs. But at the same time, the genre has come up with new advancements, and so they've added some of that stuff in here. I'm playing just a straight up 2.0.0 version. I patched it a couple months ago, and I didn't go get a new beta patch. So there's 2.0.1 that's come out since this version, I guess. I'm not sure what's different between the version I'm playing and that one. Minor bug fixes, yeah. That's kind of what I figured. 2.0, going from 1.9 to 2.0 seemed like the big one. While we're going through this intro, I'm just going to kind of talk through a bit of what's changed and a bit of the focus for what Brave New World is all about, and also what the 2.0 update brought to the table. I've talked about how like the original was supposed to overhaul the experience completely. One of the criticisms, as I understand it, of the original 1.0 release of Brave New World is that they ratcheted up the difficulty quite a bit, to a point where they were getting a lot of complaints, and people who wanted a lot of the quality of life and system upgrades to add into their game experience weren't really interested in the dramatically more difficult gameplay. So a big part of what they did in 2.0 is nerfing a lot of different enemies and bosses who had just more hit points than necessary. Fixing bugs that also made some of those battles more difficult than intended. And they've also added in a lot of cool little quality of life features, like minimum number of steps between battles. So you have a slightly lower overall rate of random encounters, but you're also not running into that instance where you're in a dungeon, you fight a random battle, you take 2 steps, you're fighting another random battle, which was a big problem in the original Final Fantasy VI. And so just kind of creating a smoother grade of random encounters through dungeons, I think is really great. Okay, so we're through the little intro, and now I'm actually going to get into the game. I've played the first 10 minutes, so I just got into the mines. I'm going to assume most of you are familiar with Final Fantasy VI. I've played the first, if you're watching. And so my party, which consists of these 3, Terra, who's the green-haired woman on the left, and her 2 kind of red shirt soldiers, are in a resistance town called Narsh. It's a mining town up in the north. It's really snowy, and they're there to capture an Esper, which is one of the magical beings that kind of provides magic in the world. Okay. Yeah, exactly. That's a really good way of putting it. It's hard to create a challenge that's like meaningfully more difficult. And I think what it seems like reading the patch notes from 1.9 to 2.0, it seems like what they did is tried to make more meaningful challenge that comes from strategy and tactics, rather than just like having bosses or enemies with a ton of hit points, and it becomes a war of attrition and a lot of repetitious like gameplay and battles. What they've done is they've made the gameplay more strategic. So you're having more, an increased rate of special encounters, so like pincer attacks or back attacks, but giving you more options within those battles to kind of be proactive in the way that you fight through them. One of those is like defending or changing your row in battle only takes half a turn, for instance. So it becomes a little more useful to be able to do those things, a little more strategic when you need to defend. Rather than wasting a whole turn on it, you're only wasting a half a turn, which I find really interesting. And the ATB speed, so the little bar that fills up throughout battle, doubles when you're in just like if you're not doing anything. So that's trying to make the battles go faster as well. You're kind of constantly inputting actions instead of waiting for the bar to fill up. Why would you make this game harder? Final Fantasy VI is like super easy when you're not like 10. I played through it. I always thought of it as a hard game. Like I remember me and my friends having a lot of trouble with it. But I played through it a couple of years ago, like I said, and you just cruise through the game. There are a couple of hard, you know, maybe challenging moments early on. But once you get past a certain point, the game kind of becomes a cakewalk. And by the end, you're just kind of rolling through everything. Which also kind of reduces the challenge. Like, you know, you start to abuse the Esper system and things just totally get out of hand to the point where, you know, the optional bosses near the end are just a cakewalk. Yeah, that's exactly right. Early game is mash A and heal. Late game is nuke everything with Ultima. Yeah, and then, I mean, once you get into, like, the X-Zone and Vanish glitch in the original, like, it's just, it's a pretty broken game. It was made, I think they made Final Fantasy VI in about a year, and you can tell that a lot of that time was spent, you know, crafting the world, crafting the narrative, and there probably wasn't a lot of balancing going on in terms of playtesting and stuff. It's full of bugs, and so Brave New World, along with lots of other mods and hacks, have gone through a lot of effort to resolve a lot of those bugs. You'll notice that battle was way faster than the original version. My understanding is that magic, especially in the early game, is a lot stronger in Brave New World. And so that fire spell just sort of, you know, melted through the Welk. Usually in the Super Nintendo version, he's going in and out of his shell a few times, and you have to be a little more strategic with your timing because you can't hit the shell without getting nuked by lightning. One thing you'll notice about this mod that I really like is they've just cleaned up the UI a little bit. You can see that just the dialogue box, the battle box at the bottom of the screen has a really clean, more modern take on that Final Fantasy text box. It kind of reminds me of what we saw later on in Final Fantasy VIII, which I kind of like. I think it looks pretty good. I think, if I remember correctly, in the settings there's a way to go back to the original, or maybe that's a different version of the mod, or an extra patch you apply. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that, like, we are at a point here where I'm skeptical about that Sakaguchi story, but yeah, anyway, like, in the tutorial here, I think that's a really good point, that, like, you don't need to be challenged in this part, right? Like, I've played through the beginning so many times, and there's a couple of times where, you know, I'm not paying attention during the Welk battle and I end up dying. And I don't think, like, Final Fantasy is the type of game series that really wants that experience for its players. Is that really real? Okay, I'm gonna go find that Sakaguchi. I'm gonna go find that Sakaguchi story. That's fantastic. Is it probably on Smutlations or one of those old review or interview archive sites? I'm gonna go find it. That's great. I've been reading a lot about Sakaguchi and Final Fantasy lately for a few projects I've been working on, and I never ran across that. It's fantastic. Yeah, Final Fantasy VI is dev stories, and just, like, everything from that era of Squaresoft is fantastic. It feels like a real, like, Wild West. Like, people were taking, like, so much energy from the advancements of, like, gaming and Japanese RPGs over the previous several years, and they knew they were in a place where they were making some really remarkable games, but it was still before there was a lot of, like, sort of corporate influence, corporate structure coming in, and so you get into some of the stories from the dev teams on games like Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VI, and it's really awesome. Yeah, I can imagine that a 9-year fan project probably has a few stories here and there. Probably some that aren't really appropriate to be shared in public, also in terms of drama and stuff. But it's a remarkable mod, and it's a remarkable achievement. Not only to kind of come out with the original Brave New World, but to look at it and be like, okay, this is good, but it can be way better. And understanding how to kind of reapproach the mod, recognize that, like, okay, I wanted to fix a bunch of things in a game that was, you know, relatively broken, but now I kind of broke it or skewed too far in one direction. So how do I revise that and get it back closer to the original vision? That's cool that you've worked on this game's code. I think a lot of projects, I mean, I'm a developer in my day job, and like, I don't know how many things I've, you know, worked on that, like from the front end, like the experience, it seems solid, but you look in the back end and yeah, it's just like spit and duct tape. And I think that's a huge part of development. And I'm almost more impressed when you have something that like works functionally and doesn't really hold together once you start critically looking at how it's actually assembled. Yeah, I mean, when you start getting a growing team of developers like that as well, everybody has their own style, their own approach to how to work on things, and just like as you're reading through like all the different changes that Brave New World brings on board, I just become more and more and more impressed that not only does it, you know, like not only does it work, but it comes together in a package that feels kind of cohesive and you know, cohesive and polished as well, which is really impressive to me. And I think that really speaks to the team's dedication, not just, you know, starting off, but sticking with it for years and years and years and continually improving it. I really admire any sort of kind of creative person or team that sticks to something and pours time and energy into making it and putting it out there and kind of believing in the project itself. I come from a writing background, and so much of writing is you write, and you don't show it to anyone until you think it's ready or until somebody else tells you it's ready. And the fan modding community, and I think you see this in like a lot of the music scene and art, where you have people who have an idea and you go for it and you put that time, that energy in, and you believe in what you're doing and put it out there without having to wait for, you know, somebody else to come along and be like, yeah, this is ready to put out. And Brave New World is just a huge testament to what that fan community can accomplish when they all get together. I wish I knew anything about how modding works. To like really kind of respect what's going on here. I don't have a huge experience with like actually understanding how modding works. I see hexadecimals and I kind of, my mind goes all spinny, but I imagine there's, yeah, a lot of wizardry going on here. Okay, let's not die. Yeah, so Brave New World does have a full-on retranslation, right? I think I'm playing with just the original. I think I'm playing with just the original Ted Woolsey translation, which I'm a big fan of. I do like the Game Boy version, the Game Boy translation as well. I find that it's a kind of a nice mix between Woolsey's work and sort of a more sophisticated one. He's a fan. Billy's a fan. A casual fan. There's almost no Woolsey left in this one. Am I correct, though, that there is a version of Brave New World where you can leave the Ted Woolsey script in? Okay. No? Okay. I'm thinking of something else then. I should probably be paying more attention to the script then. I haven't really been paying attention because I thought I was playing with the original. These sewer rats are hitting pretty hard. Uh-oh. Okay. I have dried meat. Uh-oh. Okay. Oh. Okay, I died. Yeah, I think what, like, I grew up, like, playing the Woolsey scripts way back when, so I kind of have a fondness for, like, just the warmth and personality that he added to it, and as I've, you know, learned more and more and more about localization, I understand how, like, you know, what he brought to the script, and also kind of how much of it was sort of influenced just by the circumstances he had to translate it back in the day, which were obviously challenging. So I kind of have a respect for what he managed to do, with also kind of an interest in understanding what the kind of the original Japanese script was like. I err on I err on the side of liking a bit of, like, kind of creative intent in my localizations. I'm not a purist in that regard, but I do think that there's a good balance that can be found, and I think they both have their places, and are both valuable for different reasons. Yeah, I saved just before that battle. This definitely feels like it's harder than the original now. Like, that Welk battle was easier, but these sewer rats are really coming for me. I think once I get Locke on my team, that'll be a... Okay, that's interesting about the Brave New World script, having sort of a similar approach to the Ted Woolsey... original. So, how did I hear about Brave New World? Over the past few years, I've just been getting more and more into fan mods of older games, and it just came up on several lists of, like, some of the most impressive or the best fan mods available for retro Japanese RPGs, and I'm a huge Final Fantasy VI fan, so I played the Ted Woolsey Uncensored mod a number of years ago, and that I liked that, and so I was curious to see what other kind of game experiences I could get from Final Fantasy VI and Brave New World. I actually was scared off of Brave New World's original version, 1.0 version, 1.9 version, because of the difficulty. And so when I found out that 2.0 had come out and that it was a bit easier, that was a big selling point for me. Okay, yeah, splitting fire. Okay. That's not something that I would necessarily do in the original at this point. But yeah, I can see, of course, because I can probably melt through these yeah, okay. That makes sense. See, so, like, I think that's a really good example of how, like, the game's more challenging in the fact that, like, they're dealing a lot of damage, but I also have more tools at my disposal. Like, splitting fire in the mines in the original isn't really necessary, but it does seem like in this instance, it really makes a difference to making sure that I maintain my health through the mines. Yeah, Billy T. That seems like my kind of like the type of challenge that I like. Like, I like challenge rather than just artificial difficulties. So I was reading the patch notes, and it looks like boss hit points have been reduced in some instances. So instead of having a battle against a boss where you're just, like, grinding away at, like, artificially high hit points, you're having to use more strategy and tactics with the tools that you're given to get through. BTP, okay. Which I think is just a really kind of impressive way, and a much more, like, challenging way of creating difficulty in a game. And it's kind of the opposite of the original Final Fantasy VI, which you could just spam the most powerful spells and skills and just create these kind of super party members that could just melt through everything. Yeah, I had a feeling BTB was somebody who was involved in the mod, so that's cool. Thanks for coming, BTB. This has been a lot of fun. I'm a big Final Fantasy VI fan. I'm excited to actually get a chance to sit down and like play through a big chunk of this at some point as well. Today I'll probably play for about 45 minutes or so. But I think that like video games are such an interesting medium because they're still relatively young, and so, you know, we can go back to these older games with sort of like a more modern understanding of what makes games and game systems fun and effective and challenging and complex, and apply those to these older experiences that didn't necessarily have that knowledge. Okay, yeah, absolutely. I'll stop by the Discord. That's great. I can just find a link somewhere online to the Discord. Yeah, that kind of like approach, but taking, like you say, 25 years worth of game theory behind it is like, and applying it to like this already kind of revered but flawed classic experience, I think is just something that's really unique to gaming right now. Like, you can't, nobody's going to go back and rewrite Lord of the Rings, right? Nobody's going to go back and re-record Sergeant Pepper and say that they've improved it. But I think you can kind of objectively look at a lot of fan mods that like have just taken advancements in game theory and applied them to fix flaws, and very specific flaws, which I think is really cool, really unique, and I feel fortunate to get to be involved in a part of gaming history where it's, you know, really going through this transformative process. That's cool. I really like, it means a lot to me that, you know, the dev team and the testers like are involved in the game and are looking at you know, people's experiences with it while they're playing. Like, that sort of engagement is really cool. I really admire all the work that's gone into this and maintaining it and continuing to grow and improve the experience. Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, like, to me, that alone, like, the fact that we have something like streaming, which sort of, I mean, obviously didn't exist 10 years ago, not on the scale it does now, but, like, you know, gives a fan modding team access to, like, essentially, you know, play testers, is really cool. And, like, I love that we have access to that and we can learn so much from it, which is really great. Yeah, I love like any kind of insider dev stories that can you can add there to chat. Like, that's great. It's great for me. That's fantastic. That's really cool. If I do, you know, if and when I decide to get to it, I was thinking of playing it just through my Wii on my CRT, but maybe I will keep it up here and stream and continue my way through it. Stat hat, best hat, okay. I have a feeling I'm going to get in a bit of trouble here with the Moogles. Any advice for getting through this part? Let me know, chat. Absolutely, I need help, but no, I'm good. Okay, Moogle's part is easier. Excellent. Yeah, you can't just dance your way through. Fair enough. Mog was yeah, BTB, I like that approach, and I think one of the kind of, I was saying earlier with the Welk battle, like, one of the issues I always kind of had with the game is, like, I didn't really get why the Mog battle was, or not the Mog battle, the Welk battle was challenging. Because it is basically just like a narrative scene, right? Like, all you're basically doing is going through the narrative setup for the story. So, like, why did I have to be sitting there, like, waiting for the Welk to go in and out of his shell? Which just never really made all that much sense to me. So I liked the new Welk battle that went by, really nice and quick. Just really focus on getting the player into the experience, into the narrative, and move from there. I see Kane Strider saying, forget everything you know about the original and study up the Narsh Beginner's Hall. I think that's cool advice. Like, it's so easy to just go on cruise control playing Final Fantasy VI for me. Because, like, it's a pretty streamlined process to begin with. Especially at the beginning, and, like, you just know how to get through that beginning. You just mash A, you heal a bit here and there, you get auto crossbow. But I like the idea that, like, things have changed, and that also requires me to sort of engage more deeply with the game than I have probably for years, right, since I originally played it. Oh, that's cool. Okay, I'll make it to the Beginner's Hall and take a look around there. I'm curious to see what that kind of stuff entails. I saw also in the patch notes for 2.0 that there's another, like, advanced Beginner's Hall, sort of an advanced learning hall in Jador, which is interesting to me too, because I'm sort of curious to see what's changed. That, like, midway through the game you'd be doing more learning like that. Yeah, Kane, it seems like Brave New World, like, the systems are a lot kind of more interlinked and complex, and I really am excited to see how that all works going forward. Yeah, so the ATP bar freezes in the middle of actions, but then it speeds up when there's idle time. Is that right? Yeah, so that Moogle section was quite easy, quite straightforward. Which works for me. I liked that those, the battles against the rats were kind of challenging, and required me to start thinking about the game in a different way. But at the same time, like, the major points of like pressure points, the Welk battle or that Moogle battle, like, I wasn't really in danger of dying and losing a bunch of progress, which I think is really good. So it's nicely thought out that, like, even though I died against the rats first time around, I had, I was 5 feet away from a safe spot, and so I didn't actually lose much progress. Yeah, thanks for dropping by. I know you and I have talked about this mod for quite a while. You're probably the person who convinced me to play it, a year ago. And so I'm glad I'm finally getting there. So thanks for dropping by, Andrew. Okay, so here's the Beginner's Hall. So I'm gonna pop in there and kind of take a look at what's going on. So a little bit of fourth wall breaking with the translation, which is always fun. I know that at the very beginning when you walk into town, with Biggs and Wedge. If you try to back out, you get a funny little note, which I also think worked really well. Just kind of a cute little bit of humor from the dev team. For those people who sort of like think outside the box, right? You're not always just going in a straight line. You're trying to explore, and getting rewarded for that is fun. Yeah. That's a good point. Like the beginner's house has always kind of broken the fourth wall, and I love the idea that you kind of continue that. The game has all, like, Final Fantasy VI just period has a really great balance between sort of humor and not taking itself too seriously, while also having a lot of kind of dramatic moments. And the Final Fantasy series in general has been always pretty good at that. Okay, so stat gains are no longer tied to character levels, so there's no advantage to keeping them low early in the game. I like how, addressing just straight up, a lot of experienced players of Final Fantasy VI know you want to keep your levels as low as possible until you get the Espers, so that you're getting as many stat gains over the course of the game as possible. So just sort of addressing that straight up is great, and it's a good example of how, like, right away I know, okay, this is going to be a different experience than the vanilla of Final Fantasy VI. Yeah, and just being encouraged to experiment like this is really great. And as I understand it, there's a way to respec later on in the game after you get to the world ruin. Yeah, so like actually evasion actually working, and I can't remember if evasion is tied to armor at all in the original, whether it worked or not. Oh, Ultros. Ultros is the one that respects you. That's fantastic. Cool. Okay. Oh, and magic evade. That's a new stat. Am I correct? Okay, that's cool. I like the way that, like, stats like stamina aren't just providing you with, Oh, okay. There we go. I like that stuff like stamina's, playing multiple purposes in battle. Not new. Okay. It didn't work, though. Is that right? Or evade didn't work and magic evade did? I can't remember. Okay. Hold down the B button. Set running as default movement speed. Okay, yeah, like running on a battle. Yeah. I mean, like, if you change anything, if you add anything to Final Fantasy VI, the ability to run just straight off the bat, I feel like is so necessary. The worst thing about old Super Nintendo and Nintendo RPGs is just slow walking speed, and like having to waste a relic spot on sprint shoes was always such a pain in the ass. Not as bad as Suikoden and having to have Stallion in your party, but okay, I didn't know that. I knew that about evade. I knew it didn't do anything. I didn't know stamina wasn't really used in the game. That's interesting. Okay, vigor and magic were really the only ones. So, like, how much damage you're doing with physical attacks and how much damage you're doing with magic were the only real stats that mattered. I don't actually think I knew about this in the original game, that you could leave some chests alone and get better loot later in the game. I like that in Chrono Trigger, where, you're flitting around time and you can upgrade chests, but that's intentional and something that the character or the player has to do on their own. The idea that stuff would secretly upgrade was kind of silly, and I didn't even know that. Well, that was a trick. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think, like, different games and different approaches to the games made it make sense in Chrono Trigger and doesn't make it make sense at all. Like, there's not even a mechanic for it to get better. Like, how much time passes in Final Fantasy VI? Like, a few weeks? So, like, it doesn't make sense why something would upgrade. Okay, dried meat. Tonics and potions can restore fractions of your max HP. Okay. So tonics and potions are based more like it's a percentage value this time around instead of like a set value. Because like potions became pretty much useless in the old game. I have not noticed anything interesting about Locke. Yeah, that's fantastic. I've always preferred percentage-based heals, because like healing items, because they remain useful. Like they're just as useful at the beginning of the game as the end of the game. The Tales series, I think, does that. And I've always kind of preferred that. Instead of having to just stock up on like a million potions and just mash A as you heal 200 hit points at a time. Double click through. Okay, so you guys weren't kidding about this beginner house. Learned a lot about like a lot of the improvements that have gone into making just the user experience and the UI UX a lot better, more informative, and also kind of showcasing all the behind the scenes changes that have gone into how equipment works. Is really cool. Okay, and there's stat boosts from equipment and stuff like that. Like this feels way more robust and taking a lot of advancements in how RPGs have sort of treated character building over the past 25 years and reapplying that to Final Fantasy VI is great. I like the idea of being able to more granularly create characters that feel different from one another. Well, that's great too. Adding stuff, other benefits to relics and stuff is great. Just more and more options, more and more flexibility is really cool. Tents don't exist in the game, so healing items are important. Okay, tents just don't exist. I did see the red save point, which allowed me to heal up my my whole party, which is cool. Okay, yeah, like building up your character, I think is Final Fantasy VI. I think feels like you get a lot of that flexibility, a lot of options early on, but by the time you reach the end of the game, you kind of realize that everybody just ends up the same, and they're like, despite all the options, there's no choice that's required of the player, and that was always kind of a bummer. All right. Yeah, so one thing I remember reading about Brave New World is that status effects are a lot more useful and necessary in the game, which I like. So many RPGs feature them, and then you can never use them, or it's just more efficient just to kind of cram mash on A and just kind of get through the battle as quickly as possible. Some folks, for example, will only become aggressive once they've taken damage or if they're alone. Huh. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so like what's being described here is just like how much more tactics and strategy have been added to the battle, because it's not just about dealing as much damage as you can as quickly as possible. It's about strategically understanding how the enemies behave, and also what tools in your tool belt are most effective for taking them down. That's really great. ETP, what was your background going into this? Like rewriting enemy AI from scratch. I know you had done a lot of work on 1.9 and then completely rewrote it for 2.0. What kind of led you into creating a mod like this and having the tools, having the understanding of how to make all of this happen? Yeah, that's cool. Being able to, use up a half turn for switching items and stuff like that. Like, can't remember. I think you could just do it on the fly in the original game, but I like the idea of adding in, a little bit of cost to doing things like that. Well, like, other choices like defend or change row have a reduced cost, which I think is also a great way to kind of balance out battle. Spears and some relics allow characters to guard their allies from physical attacks, but only while standing in the front row. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Just so you have a bit more options in terms of like how you kind of give a player a role in battle. So giving Edgar a spear in battle might make him, more of a tank type character. Guarding against some of the magic casters or low HP characters. So I'm wrapping up. This is just a lunchtime stream for me, about 45 minutes while I'm on my lunch break. So I'm going to wrap up pretty quick here. If anybody has any other questions about my experience or wants to tell, have anything else to say in chat, let's take 5 more minutes, and while I kind of read some of the stuff in the beginner house and admire more and more of what's gone into this mod. That's cool. Using 2 weapons with Gauntlet, Energy Glow. So the Gauntlet and the Genji Glove, the Genji Glove was one of my favorite relics. I like the idea that ability to like dual wield or two-hand wield is now tied to the type of weapon rather than having like a relic that allows you to do it. That's pretty cool. Okay, that's cool. I mentioned this earlier, but I like the fact that like your attributes are doing more than one thing. Stamina is not just determining like defense, but it's also determining how effective regen is or how weak sap is. It's powering up, being used to determine damage from certain spells or abilities. I think that's great and just gives a lot more depth to the game than the original, especially since in the original it didn't really do much of anything. Oh. Accidentally read that twice. Okay, so Locke already dual wields. Oh yeah, and 2 Mithril Dirks. I think that's like nice, a nice way to communicate right away to the player that something's different. Give them the idea right off the bat that a character can dual wield. I didn't notice that in battle. I wasn't really paying close enough attention. But open up those opportunities and those options for players early on. Yeah, the status in equip screens are different. Like I like how we have relics right on the equip screen now is really nice, instead of having this separate relic screen, which never made sense to me. I really like review. It's just a really nice, clean shorthand to see who in your party has what equipment. I don't know how many times I went searching around to find whatever equipment I was looking for, whatever relic I was looking for, and being able to see, you know, just at a glance, everything that my party has equipped is great. Yeah, I only actually found, and I did discover the review, you access it by going to your status screen and then pressing left in the original version, right? Yeah, just really, really nice, clean UI, I think is great. It really, I think I said this earlier, but I feel like it really matches up nicely with something like Final Fantasy VIII, which had a really clean design, while still feeling like a, you know, a 16-bit Square RPG. There's just been a lot. I think we just understand video game UI way better now, which is great. Yeah, I see BTB is saying the equipment redesign is one of your favorite changes, and yeah, I think it looks really good. The whole menu system is just way cleaner, way more straightforward, which I think is just beneficial for the whole game. Okay, tinctures are like ethers. Okay. I'm just going to poke around in here a little bit. I guess I don't have much to look at in skills. Can't remember, were these icons? There's a little fire icon in the top left corner. Were those in the original game? I can't remember. I'll take a look through the settings screen before I bid you guys adieu. It's been a lot of fun. This is just at the beginning here. I haven't even got into the character building. I haven't got deep into the game systems. But what I've seen just through this first intro area has really impressed me. And if this level of kind of polish, this level full of dedication to like overhauling and improving, just not just like the surface level game experience, but actually, like, you know, like rethinking how you approach the game design and the game theory. Like, I think that this is probably something really special, and I'm excited to get deeper into it and see how that same thought process is applied down the line to the Esper systems, skill systems, and all that kind of stuff. Really impressive all around, and I really appreciate everybody coming and joining in today. It's been fun. It's been amazing getting to talk to the BTB and the rest of you involved with this game and the community around it. I'm going to look into figuring out what it would take to continue the stream and keep going with it, because this has been a ton of fun. So thanks so much, everybody, for dropping by, and thanks so much for everybody who's put time into the mod, put time into the community, and just enjoyed the game, period, and helped Final Fantasy VI continue to have, you know, an impact and a presence in gaming and retro gaming for so long. All right. So as I said at the beginning of the stream, I'm doing this stream for a column in my newsletter called Late to the Party, where I play old video games for 45 minutes on my lunch break, and then I write them up in my newsletter, which is called Astrolabe. The next issue is probably coming out at the end of the week. You can subscribe to it for free at aidan.substack.com. You can see it there on the right-hand side of your screen. Just above me, right there. Head on over there. You can sign up for free. I write about retro video games. I write about science fiction, fantasy books. I write about all sorts of stuff. I'm working right now on a book about the history of Japanese RPGs. You can also find a lot of other stuff that I've written through Astrolabe. I did a big, huge, long history of Chrono Trigger recently, which I imagine you all might enjoy. So you can find a link to it there as well. Thanks so much for dropping by, and thanks BTB for coming. And I'm always happy to give attention to projects like this. It's something special. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.